Good morning and welcome to the Controller's Office Supplier Onboarding Supplier Liaison Training. My name is Douglas Bailey. I'm the manager of the supplier team here in the Controller's Office. And on this morning, I'll have joining me Kathleen Spencer, who's our AP supervisor, as well as Jamie Snelling and Jonna Duncan, who'll be answering some of your questions in the chat box, should you have any. So we're glad that you all decided to join us on this morning. Just want to give you a little bit of training on our new supplier onboarding portal, give you some tips and tricks, give you a few updates as well. At the conclusion of the training, we will send out a one-page job aid that'll really kind of be a high-level review of what we're going to go over today. But it'll be a job aid that you can use in your day-to-day kind of job to assist you with getting suppliers registered and getting any current suppliers access to make any updates they may need to make. So as far as our agenda today, we're going to talk a little bit about what is supplier onboarding. We're going to talk about your role as the supplier liaison. We're going to show you how to search for a supplier in PeopleSoft. We're going to show you how to ensure you have the correct email address in Finance PeopleSoft. We're going to go over the supplier registration template letter. That's going to be the letter that you'll send to any of your new suppliers that are not currently in the system, as well as the user ID request letter, which is going to be the letter that you'll send to any suppliers that are currently in the system. We'll get into the self-service portal a bit, and then I'll wrap up our section with the cash custodians form, and then Kathleen will come on after me. She'll tell you about the new student reimbursement process, and then I'll come back on and show you some resources, contacts should you guys have any questions after the training, and then Joanne will close us out. All right, so what is supplier onboarding? We've been live now with supplier onboarding since July 27th of this year. It's our new online supplier registration system that gives any potential suppliers or new suppliers access to the system. As well as our current suppliers, it'll give them access to the system to make any changes that they need to make. If it's a current supplier that has never used the system before, they can get access to the system by requesting a user ID. Once they get their user ID and password, they can then go in and make any changes to their profile that they need to make. There are specific forms for domestic as well as international suppliers, both individual and business. And this system will also include email notifications anytime a supplier registration is approved. You as the supplier liaison, you'll receive an email notification that supplier has been approved, and that'll kind of be your flag to know that you can proceed to enter your payment request or your purchase requisition. The supplier will get an email notification as well once their profile has been approved. So the supplier liaisons, there's the roles and responsibility, or the goal for the supplier liaisons is going to be, number one, determine if your supplier is currently in the system. The reason that's important is because if your supplier is currently in the system, there's a specific template letter that you'll need to send to them. One of the things that we've noticed since we've gone live, some of the supplier liaisons are sending both template letters. We don't want to do that. We only want to send the letter that's applicable to what you're trying to do. So if you have a supplier that is in the system, the template letter send to them is that user ID request template letter. If they're not in the system, you'll want to send them that new registration letter. You'll also be responsible for sending that letter. That letter contains the link to the portal. You'll be responsible for approving that supplier registration at the department level. You'll be responsible for being familiar with the registration and change request forms. And then you'll also be the first level of contact for all initial supplier setup and any of their questions. So how do you search for a supplier in PeopleSoft? You have a supplier that you want to do business with, and you need to determine which template letter to send to them in that invitation. First thing you'll want to do is do a search in PeopleSoft to determine if that supplier is actually in the system. The most efficient way to search for your supplier is going to be on a tax ID, and that tax ID can be either a social security number or an FEIN number. So the way you navigate there in PeopleSoft, from the main menu, you'll navigate to suppliers, supplier information, add update, and then review suppliers. And as I said, the most efficient way to search to determine if your supplier is in the system is going to be on this ID type. And that's going to be if you have their social or FEIN. If you don't have either one of those pieces of information, then the next best way to search is going to be by name. And what you'll want to do is you'll want to, on this name field, you want to change equals to contains and then search on a portion of the name. Once you enter either an ID type or a name, portion of the name, you'll want to hit search. You'll get some results. One thing I want to point out when you get the results, and you'll see this in the OnePage Job Aid that we'll send out after the training. Once you hit that search result, once you hit search and you get your results, if it's more than a result of 10, you'll want to click on View All. And again, you'll see this in the Job Aid. You'll want to click on View All because it's only going to display the first 10. So you want to click on View All to ensure you're seeing everything available to you. So then once you click on that View All, if you need to, you'll want to look in the fifth column, and that fifth column is going to be the supplier status. That's going to, if your supplier is in the system, that supplier status is going to tell you if it's approved or if it's inactive. So if your supplier is not in the system, if you click on search and you don't get any results, that means your supplier is not in the system. And what that means is you'll need to send them the new registration template letter. And that letter is going to basically give them a roadmap of what they need to do to register to become a supplier because they're not actually in the system. Now, if you click that search button and you do get some results and you determine that your supplier is in the system, what you'll need to do, like we talked about earlier, you need to look at that supplier status and determine if they're either approved or inactive. If they are approved, you're okay to proceed to either issue a purchase requisition or your payment request. If they are inactive, what you'll need to do is request that they send us a copy of their W-9, send a copy of that W-9 to AP Suppler, to the AP Suppler inbox so that we can get them active again. So if they are approved and they need to update any of their profile information such as a remit address or banking information, what you'll want to send them is the user ID request letter. That will actually get them access to the system, to their profile. Once they get that username, user ID, and password, once they get that, and they'll get that once they submit the request for that user ID, we'll approve it, and then they'll get an email with a temporary password. Once they get that temporary password, they can go in to make whatever change to their profile that needs to be made. So one of the other things that you'll want to do as the supplier liaison, you'll want to ensure that you have the correct email address in Finance PeopleSoft. So you as the liaison, you're going to be the first level approver on any new supplier registration. We're talking about the new supplier registration now, not the user ID request, but the new supplier registration. You're going to be the first level of contact there. So if you're going to be the first level of contact, we'll want to ensure that you have the correct email address in PeopleSoft. That way, once your new supplier, potential supplier that you're trying to work with, once they submit their registration, that registration can actually route to you so that you can either approve it or deny it. And the way that you'll want to ensure that your correct email address is in PeopleSoft is from main menu. You'll just want to simply navigate to My System Profile. Once you navigate to My System Profile, you want to ensure that email user and work list user are both checked. You want to ensure that you have the correct email address here in the email address field, and this is going to be the email address that you use on a day-to-day basis, the email address that you get all of your emails to, the one that you work from. Once you do that, you'll want to save, and that will ensure you have the correct email address in PeopleSoft. So you have, at this point, you've ensured that you've got the correct email address in PeopleSoft. You've gone into PeopleSoft to determine if your supplier is actually in the system, and you've determined that they're not actually in the system. The letter, there's two template letters. Again, there's one for current suppliers to request a user ID to get access to the system. But then there's the new registration template letter. That's for any suppliers that are not currently in the system and they need to register. This is going to be that new registration template letter. So this will be the letter that you'll want to send to any of your suppliers that are not currently in the system. And what we like to tell our liaisons is you'll have this letter. You'll want to copy the body. You'll want to copy the body of this letter and paste it into an email. And you'll only want to send the letter that you'll need to send. So in this case, we're talking about a supplier that is not currently in the system. We'll only want to send the new registration template letter. From this letter, it'll be in the body. You'll paste it in the body of your email. From that email, they'll be able to access the portal from this click here link. Just want to point this out that we do have job aids. One of the questions that we get from time to time from some of the suppliers is they're not sure how to navigate the system. They're not sure how to navigate the portal. We have some job aids here in this template letter, but as well we have job aids actually inside the portal, and I'll show you what that looks like here shortly. So now you've sent your email to your potential supplier. They click on that link. They click on this link to take them to the portal. Once they click on this, it'll bring them to the portal, and this is what they'll see. One thing we want to point out, we do want to ensure that your suppliers are using the Microsoft Edge web browser. That's going to be the web browser that the portal will work best in. Once they click on that link in your email, they'll want to ensure that the portal opens up in Microsoft Edge. If for some reason they have an issue accessing the portal, what they'll want to do is ensure that they close all of their browsers in Microsoft Edge, close all those browsers, and then clear cache. So in that one-page job aid that we'll send out after this webinar, after this training, we do have instructions on how they can clear cache. So that'll be something that you will be able to help walk them through. We will have that in the one-page job aid, so you'll have that available to you. So if they are able to access the portal, if they clear the cache, if they can't access it the first time, once they clear their cache, they should be able to access the portal as long as they're in Microsoft Edge. Once they access this portal, they'll want to click on this user registration tile. You'll see the sign in here. This is for any supplier that is currently a supplier in the system and they have a username, user ID, and password. If they have that, they'll want to use this sign-in tile. But if it's a new supplier that's registering for the first time, they'll want to navigate to the user registration tile. Just some other things to note here. We've got this FAQ contact us tile here. We've updated that. I think we also have training in there as well now. But we'll have some FAQs in here. We'll probably go ahead and put the job aids in here as well, the video job aids as well as the written job aids. All that'll be here as well. So we'll have those job aids in a number of different places. So hopefully your suppliers would be able to find it with it being in multiple places. Once they click on that user registration tile, they'll see 5 options. But if it's a new supplier that's registering for the first time, the 2 they'll want to focus on is the domestic supplier request or the international supplier request. If you have a US supplier, they'll want to use the Register Now button under domestic supplier request. And if you have a foreign supplier, they'll want to use the Register Now button under the national supplier request. We do give them here things they'll need before they actually get started. So here's where we're telling them, hey, you'll need your W-9, you'll need your tax ID. If you're going to sign up for ACH, if you're a U.S. supplier, because we only do ACH currently, we only do ACH for our U.S. suppliers. If you're signing up for ACH, these are the things you'll need before you get started. And we do that as well for our international suppliers. We kind of give them a heads up of this is what you'll need before you actually start the registration process. Okay, I know the ladies are answering questions in the chat, but I just want to pause here for a second. Joanne, is there any questions, anything you see we may need to address?
The girls are taking care of it pretty quickly. So I'll just start with Catherine's question. Will one-time guest speakers need to register? And John is saying yes. And when do inactives send in the W-9 to AP Suppler email? Do they do this and also do the letter to user ID process?
Okay, so if you're looking to see if your supplier is in PeopleSoft, and let's say you have the social security number and you put in that social security number and you get some results, and you look in that supplier status column and that supplier says inactive and not approved, what that means is even if you sent the user ID request template letter, they wouldn't be able to do anything because their profile is inactive. So what we'll need to do is get a copy of their W-9 so that we can make their profile active. Once their profile is in an active or approved status, once it's in an approved status, you can then send the user ID request letter so that they can request their user ID. Once they get their user ID and password, they can then access the system to make any changes to their profile that they may need to make.
Okay, and then Pam is saying the here link in my letter does not work unless they right click on it, which are the instructions that I give them when I send them the letter. So I think that just depends on users. If I click the link, I don't have to right click, but she's saying she does. So, I mean,
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right, Joanne. I think that may depend on either user or perhaps even their settings or
Maybe. But Douglas, we could always send them the URL so that Pam could then just hyperlink that into her letter. Maybe that will change it up for them, for her.
Yep.
Okay, Jonna and Jamie are crazy answering these questions, so I'm not sure if you want me to read any more.
Okay, we'll keep moving, and then we'll pause again for questions in a few. All right.
Here's one, Douglas. Leslie's asking, will there be any consideration to grant liaisons access to view supplier statuses, like a back office view, if you will? Often the supplier will say they submitted the information, and sometimes they forget to use the liaison's email address, so the approval notification goes to an initiator.
The question is, can you repeat the question one more time, Joanne?
So she's asking, would there be any consideration to grant liaisons access to view supplier statuses, a back office view, if you will? Often the supplier will say they submitted the information, and sometimes they forget to use the liaison's email address, so the approver notification goes to an initiator.
Okay, so they cannot submit a registration unless they provide a liaison's email address. So I'm not sure how the way the system is designed, it's not possible for them to submit their registration unless they provide us with an email address. So I think maybe they're providing an email address other than yours, perhaps.
Correct.
Okay, so they've provided an email address other than yours. What you can do right now is if they've provided an email address other than yours, you could probably reach out to AP Suppler. I don't think right now there's a way for you to see that on the back office. So you could, if you know that they've used an email address other than yours, you can reach out to AP Suppler and just let us know, hey, my supplier used another employee's email address. They should have used mine, and we should be able to get that rerouted to your email.
Okay, that's it for now, Douglas. Thank you.
Sure. Great questions, by the way. So approval workflow. All new supplier registrations will be, as we stated, approved at the department level first. Once you, as the liaison, approves it, a final review and approval will be made at the supplier team level. What you'll be responsible for at the department level is basically determining if once you get that notification to approve a registration as the first level approver, you just want to simply approve it if it's someone that you know that you're trying to do business with. If not, you want to just simply deny it. You will see when you get to that approval page, you will see an option to request more information. That will never be something that you as the liaison will have to worry with. That'll always be the job of the supplier team. If any additional information needs to be requested from the supplier, we'll request that information. So you'll only need to be concerned with the approve or deny button. Any request for user IDs that will be approved by the supplier team. You will not see that in your approval work list. The only thing you're going to see in your approval work list is approvals of new registrations or suppliers that are not currently in the system. So once you access that approval page, whether you access it through the link in your email notification or your work list in PeopleSoft, this is what that approval page is going to look like. And this is what I was talking about. You'll have three options. You can either approve, deny, and then that third one is request more information. You'll never have to worry with that one. The supplier team will always request any additional information that we may need. You'll only want to either approve or deny. So earlier we talked about a scenario where there is a supplier that is not currently in the system and you actually need to get them registered. Now we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about the second template letter that you have, which is the user ID request template letter. This is going to be the letter that you'll want to send if your supplier is in PeopleSoft. So you navigate it to that review suppliers page in PeopleSoft and you searched on FEIN and you click search and you got some results and you determine that, okay, the supplier that I'm trying to use is actually in the system. And the second step of that is if they're in the system, as we said earlier, you want to look at in that supplier status column to determine if they are approved or inactive. If they're approved and they need to update a remit address or update banking information, this is the letter that you'll want to send them, not the new registration template letter. So this is the letter you'll want to send to them, and the link to the portal will be here. So once you send them this letter, they'll click on this link that'll take them to the supplier portal. Once they're in that supplier portal, we talked earlier about that user registration tile. They'll want to click on that user registration tile. Once they click on that user registration tile, there'll be 5 options. We talked about the first 2 already, which is for any suppliers that's not in the system. They'll want to use that to register. But if they are in the system, they'll want to choose one of these 3 options. If it's a domestic supplier or a US supplier, they'll want to use this register now button. If it's an international or foreign supplier, they'll want to use one of these 2 options. The first international option is for international suppliers that have a foreign tax ID number. The second one is going to be for any foreign suppliers that has a U.S. tax ID number. And again, just like with the first 2 options, we tell them here some things that they'll need before they get started with the process. The other thing too, when you send this template letter, when you send this user ID request template letter, you also want to send their supplier ID along with this letter, because when they request that user ID, one of the criteria for getting that user ID is they'll need their supplier ID number. The second criteria is they'll need their tax ID number, and that they will have that. So once they enter their supplier ID number that you've provided, and their tax ID number. And I believe they also have to provide their email address and their name and maybe one or two other things. But once they submit and we approve it, once we approve it, they'll get an email with their temporary password. Their user ID, they'll need to make note of that during the process to request their user ID. So they'll get their user ID actually in the portal as they're requesting the user ID, and then the password will be emailed to them, and that's going to be a temporary password. So once they get that email notification with the temporary password, now they're ready to go into the system and do whatever change or update they need to do. They'll want to click on that sign-in tile, input their user ID and temporary password. If it's their first time logging in, they'll use that temporary password, and the system will prompt them to change their temporary password to something unique to them. If they've already changed that temporary password, then they just sign in as they normally would with their user ID and password. Once they sign in, they'll want to navigate to manage request approval. If it's a domestic supplier or a U.S. supplier, they'll want to select the domestic change request. And again, we have job aids on this in the portal. We've got job aids on this on the template letter. So it'll walk them through how to complete a change request. But if it's a U.S. supplier, they'll want to select domestic change request. If it's a foreign supplier, they'll want to select the international change request. Once they select one or the other, it'll take them to the profile where they can update a remit address, add a remit address, change banking information, update or add contact information. Again, we're going to send this. We're going to send a one-page job aid. We're going to send a one-page job aid out after this training, and that one-page job aid will be a step-by-step kind of process that you can follow as the supplier liaison to help you determine which letter you need to send. Help you determine if you need to send that new registration letter, which is going to be for any suppliers that are not currently in the system, or if you need to send the user ID template letter. There are three. It's a one-page job aid that's 3 steps, and we also have some helpful tips in there. And basically, we've been able to. Jana did a great job of developing this. We've been able to develop this based on some of the feedback that we've been getting since we went live with the portal, as well as some things that we see that we can help you as the liaisons even better or assist you better. I'd imagine this one-page job aid will evolve over time as we find more things, but we really think this is going to be a good document for you all to use. And again, we thank Jana for her work on that. I want to pause here, Joanne, before we move on. Any other questions that we can address before we move on?
The question about what browsers are supported. I know you are suggesting Microsoft Edge. For anybody that has a Mac, for example, I know a Firefox works fine as well.
Yes, the one that we really see a lot of issues with is Chrome. It doesn't seem to work very well in Chrome, but yes, you're right, Joanne. Firefox does work well for anyone with a Mac.
Mm-hmm.
But Chrome
and Internet Explorer as well.
Yes, Chrome is going to be the one that causes the most issues. That's what we've found. Chrome is going to be the one that causes the most issues.
And Henny, I would, he has a very specific question. So Henny, I would reach out to the AP Suppler team and they can work with you one-on-one offline here, I'm sure. He's saying that suppliers having issues uploading the W-9.
I'm assuming that's, is this Henny? Is that right, Joanne?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So I'll speak to this a little bit. That is another takeaway where we're seeing some of, and it's not all of our suppliers, but we are seeing a small population of suppliers having issues with uploading W-9s, and that is something that we're looking at currently, trying to find a solution for that small population of the suppliers that's having issues with uploading that W-9. What we have done on that W-9 question, we have provided, and we just want to point this out because we're not sure, it wasn't something that we had when we went live, but on that W-9 question, there is a web address on that W-9 question where the suppliers can go out to and get a blank copy of that W-9, and that comes directly from the IRS website. It's a blank copy of the W-9. If they can complete that, they can print that out, complete it, fill it out, scan it back into the system, and attach that W-9. That link we didn't have before. We have that link there now. One of the issues that we have found, like I said, with that small population is some folks are having issues actually printing that W-9. And then actually scanning it or uploading it back to the system. That is something that we think we have a solution on. We're working on that, but that is something that we're definitely addressing. And again, it's a small population of all of our suppliers. Most of them can get it attached, but we are working to resolve that little pain point for that small population of our suppliers.
Okay, good. Well, that's good. And Angie is asking for clarification. As a custodian, do I complete only the second half of the form that she's seeing here on the screen?
Okay, so we haven't gotten to the custodians yet, but we'll definitely address that for you, Angie. I think you said Angie.
Yeah, I did say Angie.
Okay.
If a supplier is already approved in the system with a correct address for sending payment, is it necessary to send them the user request form?
You only want to send them the user request form if they're in the system, but they also need to update a remit address or update banking information or contact information. If they don't need to make any changes, then no, you do not need to send not need to send them anything. You can just simply submit your payment request or your purchase requisition. So yeah, if they don't need to make any changes, you don't need to send them anything.
Okay. Thank you, Douglas. That's it for now.
Sure. All right. So, cash custodians. This is going to work the way it always has in the past. If you have any custodian employees, cash custodian employees, this form is actually out on our website. You'll continue to fill this out and submit it as you have in the past. You'll want to complete that and send it to AP Suppler. Nothing has changed here. We talked prior to this. We talked about the Supplier Portal and any outside vendors. This is for any of our employee cash custodians. Nothing's going to change here. You'll just continue to do this as you have been doing. I want to make sure I answered Angie's question here.
Douglas, this is Becky. I can weigh in on that. I think that middle section only needs to be completed if you are setting up a cash custodian, a new cash custodian for a petty cash or change fund. That's the only time that section needs to be completed, and that's so that we can make sure we know if there's a change in that, for control purposes here in our office. If it's just for a cash advance, you would just complete the top section of the form. I hope that answers your question, Angie.
She says, okay for new. Okay, great. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're good before we move on, Joanne.
We're good right now.
All right. I'm going to turn it over to Kathleen Spencer, who's our AP supervisor, and she'll talk to you about our new student reimbursement process. Once she's done, like I said, I'll come back on and I'll show you some resources on the website and talk about our contact information should you guys have any questions. All right, take it away, Kathleen.
So this is Kathy Blackburn. It appears Kathleen's mic has been disabled for whatever reason. So I will kind of walk you through this. So for student reimbursement, the only thing that has really changed is that you will no longer need to set up a supplier ID number for that. They will go through a new student reimbursement form that is located on the Controller's Office website. You'll complete the form and you'll send it to apupload@mailbox.sc.edu. And that is for students that are not employed by the university. If you have a student that's employed by the university for any of their non-travel expenses, they will use the travel and expense module to get reimbursed, which is actually in PeopleSoft. The only time that you would need a student to have a supplier ID number is if they are not employed and for whatever reason they get a stipend or a fellowship and they need to take that through AP. You'll have to have a supplier number and they will have to go through the portal to set that up. Next slide, please. So once again, that student reimbursement form is available on the Controller's Office website. It's under the section for accounts payable. It's pretty easy to fill out. We'll look at that in a few minutes. We are also in the process, it probably will not happen this calendar year, hopefully next year. We're going to create an e-form for that. So it will be all in the system instead of having to create a separate form and then submit it. It'll be similar to what you do currently for like journal vouchers and things like that. So we will get that set up in the system and then of course do training for it. So remember that the current student supplier packets are for reportable payments only. I apologize. The current student supplier packets that you used to use, we no longer use those. They will actually have to go through the portal if they need to have a supplier number for something reportable. Sorry about that. This is what the student reimbursement form looks like. You'll need to complete that. We're going to need to make sure that we have the USC ID number and the mailing address, description of what you're trying to reimburse, and then please, for each receipt that you're trying to reimburse someone, list those separately on the form, get all of that information signed off. We'll need receipts, proof of payment, of course, and all of that submitted to the AP Upload mailbox. All right, thank you, Douglas.
Thank you, Kathy.
Douglas, this is Becky again. I see another question about the cash custodian from Kelly. So first thing I would do is search to make sure you're not already a cash custodian supplier. All of those are set up. They begin with custodian. So it would be, in Kelly's case, custodian Kelly Fink. First, make sure you're not already in there as a custodian. Then if you're not, if it's just for a cash advance, you can use the new form. You don't have to go back to the old form. You can use the new form, but you don't need to fill out the middle section. Hope that answers your question. Okay. Go ahead, Douglas.
Any other questions, Joanne, before we go out to the website?
Yes, I have another question. If I haven't had a cash advance in over a year, do I need to establish myself as a custodian?
I would say again, look to see if you're out there. If you're not, you would need to, yes, send in the cash custodian form. So what happened in the past, honestly, is when the employees were in the system before we implemented the employee reimbursement module, a lot of cash advances were just being processed under the employee supplier. And once we inactivated all of those, then we needed, a way to have cash custodians in there as well. So sometimes we take the old employee supplier and convert it. And that's what we need that form for, is to set you up as a custodian. But again, all custodians will start with the first word, custodian. So if you're not in there as a custodian, then you'll need to send in that form. And I'm thinking probably because if you haven't been in there over a year, that probably will be what you have to do.
Okay. Thank you, Becky. That's it for now, Douglas.
Okay. So let's just go out to the website quickly. So from the Controller's Office website, in the left panel here, if you navigate to Supplier and Tax Management, this is where you'll find all of the resources that we have available on the Supplier Portal, on Supplier Liaisons and their roles. If we click on Supplier Management, this is going to be resources on Supplier Onboarding. Again, we've got job aids out here on the website. We also have job aids in the template letters that you send out, as well as job aids inside of the portal, all to assist the suppliers in completing their registration. We talk about the different supplier types when we were talking about in the portal international versus domestic suppliers. This is going to be a breakdown, or kind of define what that is, so that you can help suppliers determine which option they need to choose when they're trying to register. We talked earlier also about that web address that we have on the W-9 question, where it links directly to the IRS website, but we also have that W-9 on our website, as well as the W-8 BIN-E, the 8233, and the W-8, just the W-8 BIN for our international suppliers. And then lastly, we've got some Supplier Liaison FAQs. This is a one-page job aid that shows you how to search for your supplier in PeopleSoft. This is a one-page job aid that shows you how to add your email address to PeopleSoft. And this is a one-page job aid that shows you how to approve a new supplier registration. What's not out here currently is the one-page job aid that we're going to send to you. This is something new that Jonna created that we spoke to earlier. That's what we're going to send out to you here after the training. But we'll also have that posted on our website, and it'll be under this Supplier Liaison FAQ section as well. The last thing I want to point out here, webinars and trainings. So this is where we're going to have our slides and recording. This actual training will go out here as well after we're done with this presentation, as well as the slides. If you all have any questions after the session, definitely send us an email to apsuppler@mailbox.sc.edu. The ladies are pretty responsive, and we should be able to answer any questions or assist you in any way that you may need. Any other questions?
We don't have any right now.
Okay, this is Becky again, and I apologize. I just kind of started talking, didn't introduce myself. Becky O'Connell, I'm the director here in the controller's office that works with the supplier team. Y'all just keep sending those questions in if you want. I just wanted to give a shout out to Douglas and his team with a big thank you. They worked so very hard on this implementation and on these resources that are available to assist. I know it seems longer, but we've only been live for a few months. So we continue, we listen to your comments, we listen to your feedback, and we continue to work. Just like Douglas mentioned, we are working on a solution where some people are having trouble with their W-9s. But so we take all that back and we meet regularly and we continue to try to improve things. So, you know, for example, we're gonna take away, and I think we may have already discussed this before, about a back office solution perhaps for the supplier liaisons to be able to see the status of a registration.
Yeah, that's right, Becky.
So yeah, we will make sure that's on the list as for consideration. And thanks to them again, but also to the liaisons, because to use a term we're all very familiar with, you have helped us flatten this curve for learning the new supplier onboarding process. So we appreciate you and we're very grateful. So if we don't have any more questions, I could turn it back to you, Joanne, with a thank you as well, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Yeah, we do have one question that just came in. Are there any exceptions for vendors that do not use a computer? I know that is unusual, but I do have a couple that don't have access.
Yeah, so our goal is to push everyone to the portal, just because we understand and we know that we're more efficient when everyone uses the portal. But if you do have any suppliers that do not have access to a computer, we are working to find solutions for that as well. We don't have that right now, but until we get that in place, then yes, we can on a very limited basis accommodate those folks that do not have access to a computer.
Okay, just a lot of thank yous and happy Thanksgiving from some folks as well. Another question, are suppliers asked if they are small minority businesses?
I do believe that is a question in the portal. I think it's on the identifying information tab where the profile questions are. At the bottom of those profile questions, I do believe that is a question that is in there.
So if so, is this something that can be incorporated into the purchasing side of things?
Well, if anyone from purchasing is on the call that would like to chime in there.
If they are, they've been muted because they're not presenters. Okay. But Michelle, I would suggest that you reach out to Mac and Lana in the purchasing department with your question, and I'm sure they can give you some direction there. You're welcome, Michelle. Okay. I believe that's it, Douglas.
All right.
Oh, wait, now we have one more. When many of us work with vendors, we send them the link to add themselves on the SMB side. So, and Michelle, Angie is giving you some information there. Just to make sure I know, if I have a guest speaker, I need to send them the letter.
Was that a question, John?
Yes.
Okay, so if you have a guest speaker, do you need to send them the letter? Yes. If they're not in the,
make sure they're not there first, right?
Yeah, that's right. If they're not in the system, yes, you'll need to send them the letter. If they are in the system, and they need to make a change, you'll need to send them the user ID request letter. If they're in the system and they do not need to make a change, there's nothing you need to do. You can simply submit your payment request.
Unless they're inactive, Douglas, then they'd have to.
Right, unless they're inactive. If they're inactive, then they'll need to send us either their W-9 or W-8 if they're an international supplier. Thank you, Becky.
And yes, Rachel, this is recorded, and it will be out there on the Controller's Office website for you to view. For guest speakers, that's only if they're receiving payment, not reimbursement for travel expenses, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I'm thinking that's the end. Yeah, Douglas, that's it for now.
Okay. Well, like I said, if you all have any questions after the training, definitely send us a note and we'll try to get those answered for you.